Well, I am here today with Olivia Griffith from Tachyon Wellness, and I am so freaking excited about this episode. Ever since I heard about your products, I obviously had to reach out to you directly to learn more. And since testing them myself, I'm even more intrigued. So, thank you so much for being here today and taking the time.
I'm so happy to be here and thank you for having me on. I mean, I love talking about this stuff, so I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's funny because when we started talking on the phone, we obviously had similar ish stories in the fact that we both have had chronic conditions. And I feel like we've really used that to fuel what we do now in helping other people. And I could just talk for like hours and hours with anyone who has the similar story because it's just like something that you understand on a deeper level than someone who hasn't been in that situation, you know?
Yeah, I really do. And one of the things that I felt like chronic illness brought into my life was the compassion for other people that are suffering from it because I had no idea how it could be, and like what I have versus what other people have is nothing. I mean, some people suffer so much worse than what I went through, and it just made me think about all of those people and what they must be going through and how can we help them.
Yeah. Yeah, I do know because when you wake up every day and you feel like crap, really, you're like, oh my God, there are so many other people who've been living like this for so long. And it's just such a reality check. And you're just like, I cannot go back to whatever it is I was doing now that I know that there are all these people out there suffering who need help. And that's just such a catalyst for literally everyone I've talked to in this space. Like we were talking about earlier, like everyone's had a catalyst like that, which is always a blessing in disguise. So, um, I would love to just learn a little bit about maybe if you could just intro the business a little bit and then we can deep dive into your story and then we can kind of bring it back to the business just so we have some context.
Yeah, sure. So the business itself came about because my husband and I, he's a Western medicine doctor. I've always been into like the spiritual aspect of things, and I was being trained as a shaman. And at the end of my client sessions, I had started to get really tired. So I was guided in meditation that there was some sort of healing chamber that, and I know that sounds like all woo woo out there, but in meditation, that's what I was shown. So I started to search around for this particular technology. I was thinking, like, is it a hyperbaric chamber? Is it like an infrared sauna? What is a healing chamber? And I stumbled upon Tachyon, and when I started researching it and reading about it, it just something called to me on a soul level. And I told my husband, I said, I've got to go check out this, company, and it might be total bogus, but it might be the real deal. And that's when we started our Tachyon journey, and we flew to Phoenix to meet with the people who actually manufacture the Tachyon, and we were blown away by the results. And that's how the business was created. We wanted to get this out into the world for other people to be able to use and to help people.
And did you use this to help physically heal from because you had tick-borne illness, right?
Yes. And that was actually discovered after I found Tachyon. At that particular time, I really hadn't been using Tachyon like I use it today. I was using it for meditation, for manifestation purposes. I was using it to help me get better sleep, but I wasn't using it all the time. Like now, you'll never see me without like one of my Tachyon rods. Like I use them for everything. I always have them on me. We've tested them and shown that they block out 5G radiation and really just help you have an overall better, healthy mind, body, and spirit. So, once I figured out that I had Lyme disease, I started working with the Tachyon a lot more closely.
And would you say that it helped in the healing process, the physical healing process of what was going on?
Absolutely. And there were many things that I worked with that have helped me. And really, what I think Tachyon did for me more than anything was it shifted my mindset. And it helped me deal with the fatigue. It helped me deal with the anxiety. It helped me deal with the chronic pain and get through those things. But it also, I feel like Tachyon, working with it daily, raises your vibration and your frequency, and you start to heal in your body, mind, and spirit. So the way that I was thinking about things had shifted, and I made the decision that I was going to do whatever it took to heal. Because, for one, I wasn't going to live my life sick every day and in pain. And I also wanted to show that it could be done because it's considered an incurable illness, and I wanted to show people that their minds and their bodies are much more powerful than they realize and can overcome things that are even considered incurable.
I love that you say that. One of my best friends, she also healed herself of tick-borne illness through brain training, and so she now has a program where she teaches people how to use brain training to heal literally physical symptoms. But it's interesting that you bring that up because I'm a huge proponent of that. It's that moment where you truly understand that the mind and body are one. Like you try all these modalities when you're chronically ill, and you're like, why isn't this working? And there are a series of reasons why, but I think you get to that realization where like your mind and body are one, and you have to make a decision. Like you have to quit it with the limiting beliefs, and like my life is going to be different, and like I decide I have the power. And I love that this was a tool to help you get there, because people can be stuck in that cycle, not just a physical like chronic stress cycle, but just like mentally, like just like the desperation and loss of hope. And like sometimes it's like I need something to help me believe that this is even something that I can have for myself. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because, like, what you're describing, the belief that these illnesses and things are all associated with the mind and the spirit, that's like the foundation of shamanic medicine. So we believe that if you have unhealed trauma in your body, that perpetuates a cycle that creates similar traumas over and over again to try to heal that imprint. But if that imprint goes unhealed, it eventually develops into some sort of physical disease or illness. So, really, the shaman believes that there isn't anything that's incurable, that we always have the power to shift that. And for me personally, part of that was also, not doing things to change what was happening to me, but surrendering to what my body needed, which was truly rest. Like, I really had to surrender to the period of time that I needed to heal and recover. And that was hard for me because I'm a go-getter. Like, I wanted to continue on my career path, continue creating, continue doing all of these things, but my body couldn't keep up with me. And it was hard for me to say, okay, today I'm going to lay on the couch as long as I need to and just stay there. And there was also like this sense of guilt associated with it, like feeling like you're not accomplishing things, feeling like you're not doing what you should, like to my husband, like not having, helping him the way that I wanted to be able to help him. And it was just a really amazing experience to learn to let go of that guilt and honor myself for when I was only able to rest.
It's so important. I was literally having this conversation today with one of my one-to-one clients, because she's now at the beginning of her real healing journey. She's in the Western medical system. She's a nurse, an ER nurse, and she's now found a more holistic approach through a more like functional approach, but also like starting to really understand how much the mind and body are connected and past traumas affect what's really happening physically in her body. And we go through an exercise where we actually like physically time block time to do nothing in quotes, but it's like you're not allowed to use this time for anything but rest. And so we create a color, and it's like everything that's orange, which should be the majority of this calendar while you're healing, is do nothing time, because we're also type A. Like so many of us in this world are like, oh my gosh, go go go, I have free time, I could be cleaning or organizing or doing this millionth thing on my to-do list, which creates more to-dos. And it's this life lesson that I said, like, if you can master this and use this to heal, your life will be so much more than would have ever been had you not had this lesson, that life is about experiencing and enjoying and loving and living and just doing what makes you happy a lot of the time. You don't need to fill it with things to distract you. So use it as this blessing to change your life, you know, moving forward. And I relate to that because it took me so long to realize, like, just stop what you're doing and just sit with it.
I totally relate with that. And it's, you know, we're taught as like a society, like this Western society, that we're in, you know, this hamster wheel of productivity, and the only way to achieve is productivity. And that's not true, because if you're sick or if you're hurting, then you are achieving by giving your body the rest that it needs. And still to this day, like, I have overcome so much of my chronic illness. Like, I'm genetically tested regularly to see how low it has gotten in my system. And what's really interesting is that even to this day, like, I know when I just need a day of rest. And it's about probably once every 3 weeks, I'll start to just feel like I need it. And as long as I get that day, and it started with a lot more days, it was like every day. And then, you know, the days got farther and fewer between. But if I take that day once every, you know, 3 weeks to just rest, along with my other self care routines, I don't ever get run down or sick anymore. I mean, I've been healthy all through the pandemic, and I, you know, feel great. So it's been a big blessing for me to
Yeah.
learn that.
Yeah, because we're taught to push through. Like the whole thing, push through the pain. Like you're never gonna feel like doing it, so do it anyways. Or just do it. Isn't that like the Nike slogan? And I'm so like the opposite. Like I'm all for like, hey, for example, moving your body, it's great. But like I, for example, love lifting weights. Recently I've been feeling a little down, so I've challenged myself to just walk. Not saying just walk. Walking is obviously amazing, but for me, I just love weightlifting. And I'm so good at instantly scaling back and listening to my body. Whereas the previous me would have just pushed, and obviously then you set a cascade effect of whatever symptoms and diagnoses and stuff. And I think I'm like always that close to like teetering on the edge of like some sort of flare if I'm not careful, and I just keep it at bay by being really in tune with what my body is asking for me. So I also just like really relate with what you're saying. But I think gosh, I have so many questions for you. Okay, can you tell us a little bit first about being a shaman? Like what made you want to do that, and what your experience has been like since you were certified, and like kind of what you do with that education, because I think that's so interesting, unique, and just like amazing.
Sure. So, to be like totally frank and honest with you, I didn't want to be a shaman. That was never like anything I wanted to do with my life. It all started when I actually ended up going to see a shaman. And I was working with her, and she actually told me at the end of the session, she said, "Do you know that you're a shaman?" And I said, "No." I said, "I like to see shamans, but like I'm writing a book right now. I, you know, do this other stuff. Like that's not my calling. I don't want to do that." And she said, "Well, I think you're going to change your mind. And if you do, I want you to read these two books, and I want you to go to this training program because it's the best." And I was like, okay. And I just kind of blew it off for like 6 months and finished writing my book, which I never ended up releasing. But during that period of time, there was like all of these synchronicities and all of these things popping up in my life that were pointing me in this direction. And I just felt so strongly that if I, you know, didn't answer this calling, that my life was just going to like erupt in chaos. And it was almost like I was getting this spiritual message of that in my life. Like it was, they were telling me the, you know, my spirit guides, my, you know, connection to them was very clear that you must answer this calling because this is what you came here to do. And so I answered the calling, and I absolutely fell in love with every bit of it, every practice, all of the training, you know, going through. And truly, like, you're a lifelong initiate. Like, I was initiated by the Kiro tribe from the Amazon, but they really in the high Andes, and they really truly um, believe that people in Western society need to become initiated shamans because this culture specifically is so sick. And part of their prophecy was to
Mm.
train and initiate Westerners to and send them back to the West and have them helping people heal from these things, because there in, the Andes and in the Amazon, the moment that a trauma occurs, they see the shaman. So the trauma is removed from their field. So they never develop mental, emotional, spiritual, or physical illnesses. So that's why they're so healthy. They have a longer life expectancy than we do here, and they live in the middle of the jungle and don't have the medical resources that we have. So that's kind of my story of how I became a shaman.
That is so cool. I completely agree with that. We are such a sick society for so many reasons. Um but I love that. I've actually never seen a shaman. What would so like do you go see a shaman whenever, just is it something that you would do regularly, or like how do you recommend that process, just out of curiosity? Like how do you see people? Why do they come to you?
They come to me in all different ways, in all different forms, at all different times of life. But truly, the problem in the Western society is that the energy body and the traumas in our life have not been healed. And so everybody has imprints within their field that need healing, that may not have, you know, developed into physical disease yet, but can in the future. So everybody should, if this world was perfect, everybody would be seeing a shaman who knows how to help them with that. Maybe once a year would be what my recommendation, once they get through the major traumas.
Wow. And okay, so you did this and then you come, wait, did you fly out there to be trained? How does that work?
They actually came here. They when
Wow.
they initiated me in New York State, upstate New York, like near the Catskills. And that's how like strong that their belief is that Westerners need to be trained. And the shaman that actually told me that I was a shaman, she had gone to the Amazon and trained. And she said that the
Mm.
training program that they were providing here in the States was superior to her training in the Amazon, and that she had a friend who had been trained in that way, and she really like had always wished that she could have been trained in that way as well. So that's why I was like, well, if this lady knew this about me back then, I guess she knows which training program I'm supposed to do. So I just followed her guidance at that point.
I love that. That is awesome. Okay, so you come back here and then you hear about the tachyon rods or tachyon energy. How exactly did you said you were drawn to it, right?
Yeah, I by that point, like after going through most of my shamanic training and initiations, like I had just learned to live 100% by intuition. Like I don't ever question my intuition anymore. Um, I don't ever have a reason to. I just live fully in that flow of information that comes to me. So whenever the tachyon thing came about, I knew that when I had seen that in meditation, that there was something to it, that I needed to figure out what this technology was. And then when I started doing research online, I just let my intuition kind of guide the process, and it guided me right to tachyon. And that's how I ended up, feeling like I needed to go and try it.
And what is it? Can you tell us, for people who are like, what is this amazing thing that you guys are talking about? How would you describe it?
Okay, so the more scientific explanation is that tachyon is a subatomic particle that moves faster than the speed of light. So it's considered one of the fastest moving particles on the planet. The non scientific definition of that, and what my experience has been, is that it is able to infiltrate physical matter with spiritual light. It's able to come into the places where we need healing and bring light into the darkness when you are working with it. It's able to bring light to visions and manifestations. It's able to um, if you're having, like, we have people that have like neuropathy in their feet, and they start sleeping with them by their feet, and it heals their neuropathy. We've got people that have little children and they have night terrors, and they and this is one of like the most amazing ones to me, because these poor innocent little kids are having these experiences. Like, we had one little baby that was 6 months old and was screaming in the middle of the night every night, waking up from horrible dreams. And they started placing the tachyon rods in the bed with, or in the crib with the baby, and the night terrors completely stopped. So why and how that works, I cannot give you a full explanation because I don't know. And when we started working with it, I really had a limited viewpoint on what the actual abilities of working with Tachyon could do. And it works accumulatively, it works over time, it builds. The more you work with it, the better off you are. It's a practice. It's like anything. It's like, bringing healthy food or meditation into your life. It's something that you need to be constantly working with to get the greatest benefits.
Yes, we have used it in my baby's room as well. He doesn't have night terrors, but he's still nursing, so he's up a lot, which means
Oh.
I'm up a lot. So I definitely, the first night that we put it in there, he only woke up once, which is like amazing because once, like, is what we're going for to keep the milk supply up. And so it was like, even if he were to have slept through the night, I would have had to wake him up to feed him. So I'm like, whoa. And it's funny because my husband, I had been like telling him about these, and he's like, okay, that's cool. And then he's like, whoa, oh my God, this is like crazy. And so he was like taking them with him to places. And I'm like, we have to keep him in Leo's room because I need to sleep. But no, it's really cool. I have them like with me now next to my computer. See, I like to bring them up to my desk where I'm working. I'm in like a really important part of my business right now. And yeah, I mean, it's been so cool. And that's such an awesome story to hear about. Because like, how else would you help a 6-month-old baby with night terrors? You can't even really communicate. So I can't even imagine what that would be like. Okay, so back to the first part. You say they're particles that move faster than the speed of light, and it's literally called like tachyon energy. Is that what it's called? Tachyon particles?
So the name came from Einstein's theory about the existence of the particle. So the actual existence of the particle is very hard to scientifically prove because it moves so quickly. It would take billions of dollars, sort of like the Higgs Newton particle, to prove its existence. So it's going to take someone being interested enough in doing that to spend all that money. But Einstein had been theorizing about the particle for a long time, and he actually is the one who came up with the name tachyon.
And then how did it come? Do you know? I mean, I might be asking questions you don't know, but just wondering like the where are they manufactured, or who actually like where do you get them from? You said Arizona, right?
Yes. So there is an engineer and a psychic, ironically enough, who have basically worked and channeled this energy and have figured out like the engineering part, figured out how to permanently tachyonize something, which is a very difficult thing to do. Like a lot of people will be like, well, I feel like I can channel tachyon energy, and maybe that's true, but to actually get it to be inside of a physical object and to stay permanently, that's the tricky part. So I don't know how they do what they do. There are 3 people on the planet that know how to tachyonize things, and none of them will tell you how they do what they do. So I don't know the actual answer to that, but all I know is it's one of those things that you get it and you work with it and you can feel it. And out of all the time that we've had our business for 3 years now, we've only ever had one set of rods returned to us, and there was a hole in the end of the fabric. So they wanted a different set with, no hole in the end of the fabric, which makes sense. We hate to have manufacturing issues, but that's the only person that's ever actually returned the rods to us. So I think that speaks for itself. I mean, I don't think most small businesses that are selling a product can say that they don't get returns on a regular basis. Um, so there's something pretty special about it that I think people just feel it when they work with it, and it's great for helping adults sleep too. I know so many people struggle with that, and I used them last night. I woke up in the middle of the night and used them in my hands and was able to go right back to sleep.
I love that. I think you told me when we spoke on the phone an interesting story about your husband, a testimony of like not getting exposure in the operating room. Can you share that if that's
Yes.
correct, right?
Yes. So, we've had multiple types of genetic testing done. One was at my friend's wellness center in Maryland. They do like hair follicle testing through a company in Germany where they analyze everything in your DNA through your hair. We've also had testing done by someone who does genetic testing in Houston, which is actually a mouth swab of DNA. When we were doing this, I knew that they tested for all types of different radiation. And I told my husband, I was like, well, I'm sure you're going to test really high because you work under fluoro radiation every single day. He's in the procedure room, doing injections or doing surgeries under x-ray. So I was really worried about his radiation exposure levels. And for that entire year, he had been carrying his Tachyon junior rods in his pocket every single day to work. I mean, his are all tattered. They've got holes all in them. They're well loved, and he won't replace them because those are his. But he was carrying them every day. And I would be at home thinking, well, I'm not being exposed to any significant radiation here because I'm at home. I didn't carry, like I was telling you earlier, at that particular time, I wasn't carrying them on me constantly like I do today. And so when we had both of these genetic tests, they both correlated with the exact same results, totally independent labs and everything. My husband had almost zero radiation in his system, and mine was pretty high. Like I had 5G, I had all of these different things showing up in my system. And then we started talking about it, and I was like, well, I don't carry my tachyon rods around with me in the house, and you have yours on you 24/7. So I started carrying mine every day. Like I like to keep one of the little ones in my bra. Like I know that's kind of personal, but I'm like a really big heart chakra open person, so I like a little extra protection there. And since I started doing that, my radiation went all the way down. So I'd always been told that tachyon protected against all of these different forms of radiation. But now I believe it because, it's in these tests that I have every 6 weeks. So it makes a big difference.
That's wild. Um, That's wild. I love it. I'm like such a big like data person. Like I'm always I do similar tests. I do all sorts of tests and I'm always like experimenting with different things just to see like how effective is this? And I'm always trying to optimize. And I get so, so, so excited when I see a huge difference. And that is like black and white. Like you can't argue. And that's the other thing. You can't argue with data. It's like, it literally is like objective. So I love
Right.
that. So what specifically, because a lot of people are tuning into this podcast because they're looking for ways to heal from any type of chronic symptom. So you mentioned like neuropathy. We talked a little bit about sleep. What are some other like symptoms or different ways that people could use the rods to help with alleviation of certain symptoms, or even just like being stuck in like that chronic stress response that pretty much everyone is stuck in if they're dealing with any type of chronic condition?
So, someone dealing with a chronic condition, I would recommend that they keep these rods on their body or in their pockets or somewhere on their physical body every day and setting the intention to help to control whatever flare ups they're having, to help to heal from their chronic illness. And what's interesting is like, kind of like what I was telling you earlier, like when you start to work with them, it's really interesting how your mind starts to shift around your chronic illness, which really starts to help you heal. The other thing that people use them a lot for is if they have physical pain in their body, they can actually place the rods where they're having physical pain. Like I used to deal with a lot of pain in the back of my neck and shoulders, and I used to just take one of my rods and like put it behind my neck when I was like laying down or whatever I was doing, and it would help relieve a lot of the pain that I was having. So they can be used to target one specific issue if there's like a pain issue going on, or they can be used every single day on your body with the intention of healing from your chronic illness to help aid you in your journey. And as you and I both know, it's a journey to heal, and there's no overnight you flip a switch. But I can tell you that from my experience and from other clients of ours experience that they have had a really significant impact working with Tachyon, especially in the way that they think about their physical illness and how they think about their own healing process.
And I think that brings up an interesting point. What, just like thinking back from your physical experience and your training, what kind of mindset shifts do you think have to happen for someone who is struggling with a chronic condition, is just like stuck, like they're really in the pits right now, and it's like, this feels hopeless, this isn't working for me. I'm is there any hope out there?
So that's a bit of a tricky question. And the reason is because everybody is so different, and everybody, there's different blocks in their mind that might be different than my blocks or your blocks. But really, truly, like what I was talking about, like taking that time to heal and starting to listen to your body, like you really, after suffering from chronic illness, like you really learn how to listen to your body and how to know what your body needs. And really, truly, just taking the time to give it that and learning to honor yourself for the times that you rest, because we've lived in this world where nobody ever says, hey, good job for resting and letting your body heal today. Everyone says, good job for accomplishing this or good job for doing that. But, we're not rewarded for something that is so important. We're built with these systems to tell us what we need. And if we do not listen to them, we end up with chronic illness. And I think that's honestly what had to happen to me to learn to listen to my body. So really just switching out of that mindset of push through it, like you said, that thing always pops into my head, no pain, no gain. That is the worst slogan that I have ever heard. You are not supposed to push through pain. Your body has pain receptors to tell you that you need to stop doing what you're doing or you need to take time to rest, and we need to learn to listen to that.
It's so true. And like I said, I really truly feel like the only way that we really learn that lesson is getting sick. Like there's nothing else, with all the noise, with everyone encouraging you to like kill yourself working out, kill yourself to provide for your family, whatever. We have this notion that life has to be so hard and painful, and anything worth having is going to be super painful and the ultimate sacrifice. I don't really know where we got it from, but it doesn't really have to be the way that things are. And it's sad but true that the only way we really realize that we are in this age where it doesn't have to be that way is getting completely chronically sick to where we like physically cannot get off the couch,
Yeah, that is
um,
absolutely right.
yeah. Well, okay, so then you talk a little bit about when we're using the rods like to help us with like setting intentions. People might be wondering like, what do you mean setting intentions? Again, I think a lot of people who are chronically sick are purely seeing this like from a physical perspective. So it's like all this work that we talk about doing, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, like this is not something that's talked about. So even like, setting intentions, like what does that mean and what does that actually do for us in our healing journey?
So intentions are just a really important part of life in general. It's like having, almost like in modern day society, what they would call like a goal for yourself, for your own healing. And it's whatever you want to accomplish in your healing journey that day, or whatever you want to create in your life, like whatever your main objective is. If you want to use the Tachyon rods and you want to heal chronic illness, then healing chronic illness would be your intention when working with the rods. And I have different intentions every day. And I think most people do. Like one day you wake up and you're like, well, I'm going to do a podcast today. So I really want to say something and allow whatever to flow through me that's going to help people today. Versus like another day, well, I'm working with clients today. So my intention might be a little bit different, but just really knowing what your goal is. And what's amazing about Tachyon is like we can have intentions every day, but Tachyon really magnifies your intentions. It makes them more powerful and makes them happen quicker, is what my experience has been with it. And there's another like quick little thing that's coming through for me right now that I want to touch on. When you asked about how to look at the different blocks in your mind, like one thing that I've seen with quite a few clients that I work with regularly is sometimes there's a benefit to the person from being ill or being in pain. And I know that sounds weird, but there, sometimes there's something that they're craving that that pain or chronic illness is bringing to them. And so that's a great question for people that are suffering with, any kind of chronic illness or pain to ask themselves, am I gaining something from continuing to be sick? Is this keeping me from a job opportunity that maybe I'm afraid to take that leap because I'm afraid of my own success? Like there's a million things that could be in front of you that could bring up fear for you that could keep you in the mindset of continuing down that road. So that's just something else I wanted to mention, that I always have my clients ask that question. Is there anything that you're benefiting from by continuing to be sick?
That's a really interesting point that I hadn't even thought of. Yeah, that I'm just thinking about like my own life and was just trying to like apply that to, when I was really, really sick. But it's almost like you get kind of addicted to the suffering as well.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that becomes a thing and you get so used to it and you don't realize how much you like want it in this weird way. And I guess so is like human behavior. Um, but that's not a question I'd ever asked myself. So I just was like in thought there. Um that is really interesting. Um okay. So what's some other, I mean, again, I'm maybe this would have taken some time to think about just some other though like mindset work, because this is something that you know a lot about. And it's something that we explore a lot in my programs that I have passive programs that I take people through, and like just the whole first like half of it is actually just like the mindset part. Like we don't even touch on the environment or the lifestyle or the nutrition or the testing or anything yet, because it's like if your mind isn't in the right place, like if you're not in a place to receive healing, it's just, we don't even know if it's effective because it could be the perfect treatment for you, but if you can't receive it, then it's not going to work. So if you want to make sure that you're spending your time and money wisely so that it's effective and it actually helps you achieve your goal, your head and your heart needs to be in the right place to receive it. So what are some other things, we talked about like blocks and just maybe something that potentially they're fearing, they, me, us, anyone who's been in that situation. What are some other things that people can be thinking about or working through that can be like a really powerful way for them to actually invite healing in?
Well, one thing that you can look at, and sometimes like we deal with illnesses that affect the body as a whole, which is like for me, like Lyme definitely affected the body as a whole. But there's other, like if you have like a targeted illness in a specific area, like let's say someone like suffering from breast cancer or something like that, thinking about if there was any self-hatred towards that specific area of your body, because we're in this society that's really difficult for women specifically. We deal with so much pressure to look a certain way, to be a certain way, and it's actually why I left my previous industry, is because I couldn't be a part of that anymore. But really truly thinking about, where is this affecting my body? And is there anything in my mind that on a daily basis or even a weekly basis is sending hate to this area of my body? Um, I know people that have developed, breast lumps and things like that. And they've been dealing with like feeling like, that they weren't pretty in that area and that was really affecting them. And then they started to develop these breast lumps. Or I know people that have had issues with either their children or their mother that have developed issues in the maternal areas, whether that be like the ovaries or the, reproductive system, or in, the breast area. Think about like where this is affecting you and how can that correlate with what might be in your mind that could actually be doing harm to that part of your body. I feel like that's a pretty common thing that I see.
That's so interesting. It reminds me, I haven't read the book, but have you heard of the emotion code?
I have heard of it. I haven't read it either, though.
I was listening, he was on a podcast I was listening to, and it was, I don't really know enough to speak on it, but it was a similar concept. And I was actually looking at practitioners in the Austin area because I was like, this is so interesting. I have to learn because there are like now practitioners all over the world who, and I believe it's a similar thing, like you're having pain in certain areas and then they work through the emotions stored there, but there were some insane testimonies of healing and it blew my mind, and it made me wonder because my issue is thyroid.
Mhm.
And I was like, I wonder, do you know what's like, I was just trying to like link my situation to what you were saying. Is there a way to make a link there? Have you heard of that, or is that something I would just have to go research?
No, there definitely is. A lot of the people that I work with that have thyroid conditions, there's some sort of truth that they're not speaking. And that tends to be the biggest block in the throat chakra area is some sort of truth that, like, maybe you don't even know what it is yet, but digging and finding what that is, or like maybe just being fully like authentically themselves. Like, I know for a long time in my own life I had a throat chakra block forever, and it was because I was not being fully authentic because I was afraid of what people would think of me. Like, I live in East Texas, right? Like, I'm a shaman, so like I'm way beyond like the typical East Texan, and I was afraid to tell people who I was and what I stood for. And I had no idea how much the community would actually embrace what I did. And not everybody does, but there's a lot of people that have really embraced that and have, you know, even come to me and tried something new. So, for me, though, like finally releasing that was stepping into full authenticity and speaking my truth and showing the world exactly who I am without any filters, like without any bogus. Like, it was just me. And I'm lucky enough to have a partner in my life who really was like loving of me and allowed me to do that. And even like, we all have these flaws, right? But he loved me like past my flaws, and it helped me learn to really love myself. So once I was able to step into that authenticity and that truth, like I was finally able to release that throat chakra block before it developed into something more serious.
That is so interesting. I relate to that because I feel like once I got better, I am obviously now like who I believe I'm supposed to be, and I'm so happy and fulfilled and I feel amazing like almost all of the time in every way. But I was so much not this person in every way before I got sick. Like in every way it was like I was fighting the person that I wanted to be because I thought, I had to be very like I wanted to have like the most corporate desk job and wear like this suit to work and like be all these things. I was very competitive. I'm very type A. And so I wanted to have like the best GPA and go to law school. And like, it's just so opposite than who I actually am today. And it's so hard to even think like, wow, like what would have happened to me if I would have like just, for a while I was very much in the corporate world and stuff like that. But it just was so opposite, like so much friction to who like I wanted to be, like who I actually am. And that resonates with me, and I literally never thought about that before.
It's amazing. Like, it's really amazing work, like unpacking all this. And what's so interesting about it is like you pull off a layer of what needs to be looked at or needs to be healed, and you're like, oh my gosh, like what's underneath this? And then you find something else and you pull off another layer. And like healing really is like peeling an onion because there's so many layers. And there's things that, like, as you go through the healing process, like the first time I went around the medicine wheel and I started to heal everything in my life, I was blown away by these little tiny things underneath that had actually been affecting me in a pretty deep way, but they had been hiding under the big things that were affecting me the most. It's like when like my clients come to me, I say, what is the one thing in your life affecting you more than anything else? And that's what we're going for first, because that's the biggest thing that needs to come off. And then we can start to look at all the pieces underneath.
Wow. And so what was I going to ask you? My thoughts are going in like so many tangents because you'll say something and I'm like, ooh, but then I have a question over here. What about traumas? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know that's the common thread, maybe not always, but in my experience, that runs through every chronic condition. And a huge point of conversation between myself and my clients or my students in my courses. So I would love to hear from your perspective and experience, like how that manifests in physical and symptoms that we're experiencing, or anything like that.
Okay, so like when someone has a trauma in their life, there's two different ways that imprint can show up in the energy body, which is where the trauma, how a shaman calls the trauma the imprint. So the first way is that the mom or dad can pass their unhealed traumas on to their children. And so this can go on for 7 generations of just passing it on to the next, passing it on to the next, passing it on to the next, which is why it's so important for us to heal so that we don't pass that on. And the moment that we are able to heal our own traumas, we not only heal that in our children, but we also heal that in our lineage. So all the people that might have carried that trauma before us. The other way that a trauma can occur is simply our own trauma in our life. A lot of the traumas that I see, they start in childhood. And sometimes it's not some big, huge thing that you would expect it to be. It's something smaller, like um, maybe like someone said something to you at school, but the way that that impacted you at a soul level at that time was so profound. And so it created a little imprint in your energy body. And over time, the imprint's whole objective is to be healed. It wants you to heal this so that whenever you experience something like this in the future, it doesn't impact you the same way. So, what might happen is let's say that someone deals with losing a parent and they have a trauma that's like abandonment in their life. Well, then as time goes on and they become an adult, they'll start to attract relationships that also are create abandonment in their life again. So it's like a cycle that continues to attract things. Maybe you pick up some addiction to help you deal with the abandonment along the way, and all of these things live within this one imprint. And each person has about 3 or 4 imprints before they've done any shamanic work. So, with that imprint attracting these same cycles, it's attracting these cycles because it wants you to heal. It wants you to figure out, okay, I'm not actually being abandoned in this situation. You know, this isn't about me. This is about this other person and a decision that they made. And you start to be able to heal that and look at that differently. The problem is, a lot of people don't realize that these things are coming up to be healed, and they don't do the work to heal the trauma, because we're taught to exercise and eat healthy, but nobody ever teaches us to take care of our energy body or deal with our traumas. And, you know, people might seek out therapy because it's the thing that they know about. And some therapists are amazing, and there's great life coaches and things like that out there. But one way that therapy can go really wrong is you continue to perpetuate the story that you're living in, and instead of healing the trauma. So you're just reliving the trauma every time you go to therapy, instead of actually finding ways to get to the root of that and heal it. So over time, when that trauma goes unhealed, whether you've tried to do anything about it or not, it will develop into a physical illness or some sort of physical manifestation. It can be anything from like neck and shoulder pain to a heart issue to a thyroid issue to, you know, chronic illness, chronic pain. There's just a million ways that it can show up. And the reason that it's doing that is because you haven't listened to any of the cycles showing up. Like, you haven't changed the way that you feel or done the work to heal trauma on that level. So it has to show up in physical illness. The same way that you and I weren't listening to our bodies before we had that experience is the reason that trauma creates physical illness.
Wow. So, what would you recommend? Like, if someone is like, whoa, this resonates with me so much, do they go then see a shaman, or is there anyone else who's able to do that work? Or is that like the first point of call?
I would definitely recommend seeing a shaman. That's going to have the most profound and quickest change for the person. And there's amazing other energy modalities too, like Reiki. Like the way that I explain the difference between like Reiki and shamanism is Reiki, every time you get a Reiki session, it like peels off a layer of the outer edge. And then shamanism is it's like Reiki is like laser surgery, and then shamanism is like physical surgery where you actually go in, you take the imprint out, and you know, really drastically change your life with a pretty quick movement. And you better be ready for transformation because it comes quick, and people who are very aware are going to see that and feel that. Someone who might not be as aware, I was talking about this actually yesterday, but like I had a client who came to me and we worked on anger issues that had been passed to her from her father. And she was an older lady, so her memory probably wasn't the sharpest at the time. I mean, she was in her 70s. And she came back to me a month later, and you know, she was like, okay, so this is what I want to work on. And I said, okay, great. I said, how is the anger issues going? She goes, oh my gosh, I thought about that 2 weeks ago. I haven't had a single angry outburst, and I was trying to figure out where they went. Like, she had totally forgotten what we had worked on the time before. And that's sort of how things that need healing work. Like, once they're healed, you don't really think about them anymore. They go away, and of course you don't want to think about them anymore. They're gone. So but someone who's like a very self-aware person is really going to see shifts and transitions quickly. And I also tell people to do really like do research, find someone that intuitively you are very guided towards, that you feel like you resonate with what they're doing or saying. There's a lot of like weekend type shamanic courses out there, and I've noticed like a lot of people, you know, will take one and they have the best of intentions, but they might not be fully trained to help someone who's really in need of some deep healing work with someone who's like really gone through a full shamanic training. So ask them about their training, ask them, you know, where they were trained or who trained them, and also listen to your intuition, because that's going to guide you to the right people, the people that are meant for you. The client always picks the shaman.
That's really interesting. And I picked on something that you said about therapy as well, because I resonated with the idea of like reliving the trauma over and over again, like constantly discussing it over and over. I think that's like something that turns people off to therapy when it's like so, when you're at the point where it's so sensitive to touch that it's like, I just don't want to be in this position. And I can, again, like speak from experience where I want to like just relive this over and over and over and over, you know, like forever. Like you said, no one wants to relive their traumas. Obviously, you know, people are doing it because they want to work through it, so the intentions are there. They want to be on the other side. But I like this. This sounds so much better to me. It's just like not something that I was aware of, but I'm definitely going to like even now, like I haven't been going to therapy. I used to a long time ago, but like one of the things that held me back from it was exactly what you said. Nothing against it, because it has its time and place and it's great, but I didn't like the idea of living through it over and over again.
Of course. And that's how, and like you said, that's how a lot of people feel. And there are some really great proactive therapists that will really help you to heal trauma, but they're hard to find. And one thing that, like, through my process, like, and through my training that we're taught is that you write your own story. So if you keep reliving the story that you don't like, instead of working to create a new story exactly as you want it, exactly like us being healthy and here in this moment and feeling great today, we created that because we wrote our own story. And that's what everybody should know that's watching this right now, that you can write your own story. You can create the life that you want. And that doesn't involve reliving the things that you don't want over and over again.
Yes, it's so true. Like you can create your life, and people are always like, you're so lucky that you get to do what you love and like you're happy. I'm like, this was work. Like this was everyday conscious like intention and effort for me for years and years and years. Like I'm not sure I believe it was any of this was luck per se, but I think that's like the powerful testimony that is amazing, like you said, for other people to hear, because it's like there's enough abundance out there for everyone to have that life of what makes them happy, and it's yours for the taking. But you have to realize that like you can create it, you can make this whatever you want it to be.
Yes, absolutely.
So just another question for you in terms of like, do you ever recommend any like habits that could aid in the healing process maybe after someone sees you? Like I know a lot of people talk about breath work, certain types of meditations. I've personally done tons of different courses. I always say to people, obviously you have to find what works for you, or else you're just going through the motions. But it is a question that I get asked a lot, just so people have like a jumping off point where they're like, hey, I could research X, Y, and Z that seemed interesting for me that I haven't tried.
Right. Well, for me, the practices that I like to do specifically are I like really three things. I like to work with my tachyon rods and use them in meditation and even just relaxation. Like meditation, people think about it and they're like, well, I can't meditate or it's too hard. There's meditation is simply like can just be relaxing and concentrating on your breath or just thinking about a wonderful, beautiful place that you love or taking a walk in nature. Like there's so many different ways to do meditation that are not what people talk about. The other things that I like to do is I love to take baths with 2 cups Epsom salt and 1 cup baking soda because in shamanic training we were taught that's how you cleanse your energy body and help to just keep everything clear. We're very absorbent beings, and if we have a bad day or we deal with something difficult at work, we might come home and feel really icky, and just taking one of those baths can really help just cleanse it off of you. And again, using that intention when you do that. Also for me, I just love to be in nature. And I also do this practice that is a very shamanic practice that is called cord cutting. And some people that are watching may have heard of it and some people may have not. But like we develop energetic cords that are not like our connectedness cords. These are energetic cords that allow negative energy exchanges. They happen with everybody in our life, from our parents to our boss to our husband to our kids. And I regularly cut cords from people if I have like a negative interaction with them. So, like, even my husband, let's say he comes home from, dealing with chronic pain patients every day, and he comes home and he's a little irritated or edgy, and that doesn't happen very often, I will say that. But he comes in with a certain attitude and I'm having a really good day, and then I might just feel like, well, darn, like I don't, feel as good as I did earlier. And I go in the bathroom and I imagine that there's an imaginary cord from me to him and I cut it. And you can use your hand. You can, like a lot of my clients, I tell them to do this in the shower in the mornings, or you can actually use a knife and just imagine where you see that cord connecting you to that person and just cut that cord. And sometimes it needs to be cut a few times. But what that really does is it protects us from taking on other people's energy. And that is something that we do all the time without realizing it. And I'm sure you've had the experience where like someone walks in to the room with you and they have a headache, and suddenly you get a headache and you're like, why do I have a headache right now? And it's because they came in with a headache. Well, that's just something coming through. We're all connected, and it's just coming through that negative connection point. So that's another practice that I use almost daily to keep myself really clean and clear.
I love that. I've never heard of that before. But I can think of like a million times where I would use that because I'm like, I've just done like my perfect morning routine and the birds are chirping and the sun is shining and life couldn't be better. And then someone's like dumping all this negative energy on me. I'm like, oh man, like, gosh, I was having such a good day and just feels icky. But I love that because I'm really sensitive to people's. I didn't used to be that way, but I am now. And because I work so hard to protect my energy, it's like the most important thing to me. And so it's that's really cool. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on, or anything else that I didn't ask about that you would like to share? No pressure there, but sometimes I'm like I go in these tangents because I'm so interested in all the different things that you're saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole like aspect of people healing, and like my best advice to people who are trying to get better is find out what might be blocking you from getting better. Really look at those things and really reflect on that and see how you can overcome those things. Also know that there's always hope for healing, no matter what a Western medicine physician tells you. My husband will be the first to tell you that they don't always know what's going on. And, there's as much guesswork to what they're doing as to what we're doing. And you have to find what works for you. But really, healing is about honoring yourself. It's about finding ways that feel right to you. It's very individualized. And, you know, it just keeps going deeper. Like the more that you heal, the more ways that you can find out to improve your life, like even down to like some of the stuff that I know you talk about, which is like looking at the products that you're using, looking at the brands that you're using, looking at even like your household cleaning products, looking at what you're putting in your body, looking at all these different aspects. And the more that you heal, the more that you're able to really nitpick at those things and say, well, I've cut all these things out. Now I'm going to cut all these things out. Like I tell a lot of my clients that are working on like getting healthy and healing, as soon as you run out of a product, look at the natural alternatives. See what you can find that doesn't have toxic chemicals in it that can help you do better and be better. I mean, I'm sure there's like in Europe, there's 1,300 plus things that are banned from their beauty products. And in the United States, there's only 32. So why are we allowing all of those other chemicals in our products? Like, we're not looked out for the way that we should be. And we need to learn to research and learn and look out for ourselves and start slow, one product at a time. You run out, you find something new, and just keep finding new ways to heal, because there's always hope. There's always something that can help you get better.
And I think that's the beautiful part about it. Like, there are so many areas, there's so many variables. And because we're not told like what you put on your body matters, we just think, well, it's on, it doesn't matter. Well, no, it does, because your skin's absorbing it. So there's always so many different areas to look into. There's stones that have been left unturned, even if, like you said, we've been told that every stone has been turned. Well, we know so little about our existence here on this planet, about science, about our bodies, about the brain, about everything. So there's always more. But yeah, I mean, products are huge, is a huge part of what I do, because they're not regulated. There's no, the FDA regulates the cosmetic industry. It doesn't really make any sense because they know nothing about cosmetics. And so basically, there's no law. Like, literally, people think, well, if I pick it off this CVS or Target or wherever you shop at, that obviously it's going to be safe. But it's like, literally, nobody's tested it. Nobody cares. And that's the sad reality in America. And basically, they say to the companies, like, as long as you say that it's a safe product, and safe has no definition, then it's fine. And so we have to be cognizant of the fact that people don't have our best interest at heart here. Not that it's like all doom and gloom, but that we have to stay empowered. And I have a masterclass for anyone who's interested. That's like a recorded masterclass I did on like non-toxic home, where you can look at all of the ingredients and kind of like exactly like you said, just one by one, because you can't ever do everything at once. So like just when you finish one bottle, you can go out and replace it, and or you can make it, and it doesn't have to be more expensive. But those things, all of it makes a difference. So I love that message of hope and healing and empowerment and all of that. And I just like appreciate your wisdom so much. Where can people find you? How can they work with you if they want to, get a hold of the rods and all of that?
So they can find me if they are interested in setting up a session with me. My personal email is what I give everybody. It's Olivia, OliviaHard, like dog, T like toy, @gmail.com. If you're interested in purchasing the rods, you can check them out on our website, tachyonrods.com. And it's Tachyon. And I know that you have a coupon code because you are, you've got one specifically for you. So you can, use that on this show so that people can use your coupon code and save money on their purchase.
And I will link your website and the website for the rods, your email, everything, like your Instagram, all of that, so people can contact you directly. and I'll link the code as well there. I believe it's that healing feeling, but I just want to double check that that's the case. Thank you so much for being here. I feel like I had so many like aha moments of myself, and I'm gonna have to like reach out to you and work with you directly. Since I've started my podcast, I've like now upped my practitioner game. Like my husband's like, what's this new thing that you've been taking Leo to every couple of weeks? I'm like, you wouldn't believe it, but I learned something on my podcast, and now I'm catching up on all this missed time. So this is gonna be another thing that I book in, and he's gonna be like, "Wow, you're seeing a shaman now? What?"
I love it.
And
Yes, anytime.
I yeah, and I'll share about I'll do like an after episode too, on my work with you and kind of like what's come up, because I think that will be really interesting. But anyways, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it too.